Check, check, check. If you're hearing the sound of my voice or watching this on YouTube, that means you're tuned to another chapter of the Introverted Intuition podcast. My name is Jeff, aka New York selling author, aka Amazon best-selling author. Got to manifest and all that. By the time you're hearing this episode, it should already be November, if I did the schedule correctly, and that means our co-host CR will not be present for the month of November. So you're just going to have to get used to me holding down the show until he returns in December. Also, as a reminder, we are sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is a service that provides online therapy. And by using the code INTROVERT at checkout, you can get 10% off your first month. So you go to betterhelp.com/introvert, use the code INTROVERT at checkout, get 10% off your first month, and get the help you deserve. Today, we have a special guest. I have a special guest whose page I was already following, but I was reminded that I was following by my brothers over at the Off the Strength podcast. I think the guest was on there recently, or you maybe did something with them recently. And
I think that was my months are getting away from me, but I believe that was earlier this year.
Yeah,
Or it might have been late last year. I'm not 1,000% on it, but yeah, I did a podcast with them. I did a live podcast with them. Great guys.
Yeah, those are my brothers. I just was reminded I was following the page. I was reminded of what the page Afro Brutality is and what it does. And I was interested in speaking to the mind behind it. So, man, just set that up. And I'm happy to have you. Please introduce yourself to the people.
I am Sin Martinez. Have many titles. I am the creator of Afro Brutality. And here we go, man. Here we go, baby.
I guess we'll start with how are you? These are probably the most turbulent and trying times collectively we may have all experienced in this lifetime. And I'm wondering, how are you holding up during all this madness?
I'll give you two versions of how I am. I'm doing fucking super fantabulous. You know what I mean? In all intent purposes, man, I was raised by my mother, who's a Black Panther, or a former Black Panther. So she always put me in situations where I always thought about the opposition and how to overcome opposition, and whether that opposition was opinion of who I was as a Black person, or the opposition was an opinion of a teacher and the way that I articulate my thoughts, or, a neighborhood bully or a school bully. I just know how to overcome opposition. So 2020 has been probably the most productive I've ever been. Wow. And it's because I just work well under pressure, man. I work well under unforeseen circumstances because my mind always thinks about unforeseen circumstances, you know what I mean? Or when things go wrong. And I try to anticipate things going wrong way in advance. So there's a part of me that's doing absolutely fucking great. Then there's a part of me that's like, I feel like I'm doing nothing because I'm doing a lot of this stuff by myself, man. I try to explain to people that once you reach a certain level in life, people really just stop fucking with you. And not necessarily because there's anything wrong with you, but if you match my platform to many people's platform, it's just untouchable. The things I've been able to do and the type of conversations I've had with the types of people that I conversate with and can text at any time is just above most people's heads. And I didn't really have to think about that or be as aware of it as I've wanted to be until now. When people are at home and they're on their phone and they're either not answering or they're taking forever to reply, or like you are now not a priority in that person's life. You now know that your concerns and the things that you want to do with your life and your goals are not aligned with theirs. And it's unfortunate to be, quote unquote, king of New York by myself, dude. Like it's kind of sad, and I go back and forth with how I actually feel about that. And part of me is like, fuck it. And then part of me is like, isn't this the age-old song, that our biggest opposition is not necessarily, as Black people, is not necessarily anything other than other Black people when it really
Right.
comes down to it. Of course, every race, every government, every politician, every corporation are going to do what they can to control the narrative and to control who's hired, who's fired, and what initiatives are taken, and how money is spent within the corporation and within the community. But when it comes down to it, if we knew how to get along with one another, none of that would even matter.
Hmm. I have like 3 points in my brain I want to go to, but I want to start with, take me back to late February, early March, when we were forced into a lockdown. You mentioned that you're able to kind of adapt and adjust and move
Yeah.
forward your own way because of maybe your family's history, and that's embedded into your being. But no matter how, I guess, focused you are or strong you are, I feel like no one could have predicted that forced lockdown we were into. We were kind of forced to live within our own minds for at least a month or two in that moment. And I'm curious, was that realization, that new reality, just as easy as everything else you've been able to adjust to?
I'll answer that. I can only answer that in one way, and that is, as a intellectual introvert like myself, I'm always in my own mind. Do you know what I mean? So when the whole world kind of had to be in their own mind, a lot of people weren't used to that. I'm totally used to that. A lot of
Same.
the conversations I have is really with myself, not because I don't think the people around me are qualified. It's because you reach a certain level where you have to really sit down and think, who do I know that's actually smarter than me? Like, who could I even ask this question to that's
Mhm.
going to give me a relatable answer? So I say that to say that um, I wasn't able to anticipate it, but I went right into work mode. Okay, what's needed? What's needed in the community? Oh, face mask. Okay, get some seamstresses to put some face masks together. Let's source this material. Oh, it's out of China. Let's call so and so. Let them set that in. We'll send it to the seamstress. Seamstress, you ready? Good. Here's some of the stuff I'm looking for. Here's the material in here. Here's the fabrics. Make the samples. I'll talk to you next week. Like,
Mm.
I can't. Oh, what are we gonna do? Oh, like I'm not that guy.
Yeah, yeah.
It's okay. We're pandemic. What's necessarily? What's the healthcare system talking about? Okay, what's New York local talking about? Well, okay, what's New York City? As I don't know, officials. What are they talking about? What's the mayor talking about? Okay, city council. What are they talking? Okay, police. What are they talking? Like I was just that guy
Yeah.
because I've always wanted to be that guy. Excuse me.
No problem.
And to be that guy, you have to you've got to make yourself into that guy. And depending on what kind of level you're trying to get at, you have to figure out, okay, where am I at right now within my circle of influence? Um, and then how do I grow that? And what are the issues? And what are the things that within my little circle I think I can solve or help solve? So the situation has made an extra intellectual introvert like myself
Mm.
into more of an extrovert because I'm making moves that most people can't make, and I'm just set up to do like to be that guy. So it's cool, but it sucks that it's more like Jay-Z and not Wu-Tang Clan.
Mm. I had the complete opposite experience. I also identify as an introvert. I feel like I definitely feel like I'm an intellectual as well. But
Well, before you go any further, how old are you?
I just turned 29 actually.
And you're 29 during the 90s, like 80s, 90s, like
Yeah.
uh-uh.
Um,
I don't even think you understand the level of introvert from someone like me. I'm a 70s baby.
right.
You understand? Like I had to wait for cartoons to come on at a certain time or I wasn't watching cartoons.
Mm.
And I couldn't even choose the cartoons I wanted to watch. I had to watch the cartoons that they decided that people that aren't me decided, or this is what I want to watch, right?
Yeah.
We had one kids show. It's called Kids Are People Too, and it would come on Saturday mornings. And if you missed it, you'd have to wait another week to see that show. So just imagine, and not only that, everything was pretty much black and white or black and green if you were on computers.
Mm.
And then you brought in the Apple. Apple was like a grayish black, like a grayish display with black font, so to speak. So what I mean by that is you lived off your imagination. I lived off of my imagination. And that's what made me an introvert. Like, I made like blanket forts with little army men and acted like this was World War III. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. I never like the generational differences between like introverts and extroverts. I never thought about that till just now.
Mm-hmm.
You guys
give it some consideration, give it some thought. Like, we had books, we did not really have TV shows, and if you were black, you could only dream of black actresses and black movies.
Did you feel in your community you were ostracized a bit for being the way you were?
Never. I was a diplomat from the time I was born, and what I mean by that is I've had to represent black people since the time I was born, because I was in white neighborhoods, white schools, parochial schools, Catholic schools, charter schools, that sort of thing. And they'd always ask me, well, why do you people do this or say or say that or dress like this? And because I knew both worlds, black culture, white culture, I could just properly explain it in no limit of time. So
right.
It was always pressure to know everything and represent correctly. Whether it was at school where I'm the only black kid in class or in that grade level or whatever, it was always a lot of pressure to make sure I knew what the fuck I was talking about. So I had to stay. I was already kind of into the music, really kind of brought me in, and we moved to Texas. That sort of brought me in because Texas is huge. Is that divide between white and black and Mexican is just so real. Where stick with your kind, date your kind, date your, like just unwritten rule, and it's super big. But I was never felt ostracized ever. I'll tell you, I felt more ostracized in the black community than the white community ever. White people are wanting to learn. They want to learn. They want to understand. And black people just want to criticize what you don't know. So I went from Catholic school to public school because the Catholic high school it was farther than the Catholic school, and it just cost a fucking shit ton, and my parents decided not to do that. So I'm going into freshman, going as a freshman. I'm listening to Ozzy Osbourne, Iron Maiden, Jimi Hendrix, Commodore, Stevie Wonder, and I'm getting ostracized because I'm wearing Izods and Dockers, and it's 80, it's like 84. Like, so who gives a fuck? Like,
yeah.
This is how I dress. And then it was kind of cool I started to educate them on, let's just say, white culture, for lack of a better term. So, I used to come to school with the Hilfiger, and they were like, yo, what the fuck? I said, that's Tommy Hilfiger, off Saks Fifth Avenue rack. Or I'd come in with the, Mickey Mouse polo or whatever. Like, I was showing them, like, yeah, y'all can wear them fat laces and them fat lace Adidas and whatever, but I'm coming dripped out in this Hilfiger. You know what I mean? Get on this side of the coin. So the ostracization really comes from, for me at least, was the black community. Never really from the white community.
I feel like for me, I grew being an introvert. I feel I was blessed to be able to have this ability to live in my own mind, because I feel like I was able to ascend and accept myself way sooner than my peers have. I feel with extrovert, I feel like I mostly surround myself with extroverts, and they require energy from different sources to stay sane. But for me, all I ever have to do is look within. And I'm curious if you maybe feel that same way. Did you feel like you were able to accept who you are earlier on than your peers?
It's a game. It's a dance. It's a sweet little dance. It's a sweet little game where it's like you want to be popular or you want to be considered. And I'm really speaking about high school. I haven't even gotten into corporate America. Corporate America, I really at that point just didn't give a shit. I had that good of a reputation that it didn't matter. But in high school, you kind of played that game where it's like, oh, you try to figure out based on what they're telling you what's considered popular, and maybe you listen to that music but you don't dress that way, or maybe you dress that way but you listen to a different type of music. So it's an identity crisis, and it's a really like an identity dance. But I've always been ahead of trends,
Mm.
mainly because my mother, you know, she had to make the ultimate decision whether she was going to continue working nonprofits after being with the Black Panthers or go into corporate America. But the offer she was getting for corporate America was just too big, and pretty much almost at 30 years old, she was a CFO of a major corporation at the time. But they called her comptroller. So they had different titles back then. We're talking like 70 fucking 7 or some shit.
Mm-hmm.
78, 77. So what I'm saying is having a mother that's a CFO and I'm like 7 years old, we got to go to all the corporate parties. So guess what? I'm part of the accessory now. So I've got to wear the best shit. I've got to wear the cleanest. I've got to look dipped crazy all the time. So we were always shopping in the best places. So for me, it was kind of educating my community because I really didn't start going to school with Black people until public school.
Mm.
So it was like, yeah, I love Run DMC because they kind of was playing with both, but how about this Black Sabbath? What do you think? And it wasn't, sometimes I could outwardly play it, and sometimes I could just sneak it while I'm in the house. I could just turn it up and as the kids walk by, that sort of thing. So it was a healthy for me. My life has been a super healthy exchange of who I consider myself to be, and being able to make it relatable to my community and the world at whole, and the world in general, or
Mm.
as a whole.
Very interesting. Has, in your opinion, the climate of the country, the tension in the air, the racial divide, looking back on the 70s to now, much of a difference?
Yep, there's a lot of difference. I just don't like our position as Black people. We're begging and getting mad, and like, there's so many bad stereo. I keep seeing this commercial on YouTube, because you watch YouTube, you don't pay the $14 a month. You got to watch all the fucking commercials, right? So this one commercial from Dove. Oh, and I think they're basketball players, and they keep talking about all these misconceptions in the media about Black people. And this one guy says, Black guys love Black women. I'm just like, the one thing I can tell you about the 70s in particular, and I'd say the 90s, is we were Black and proud, dude. Do you
Mhm.
understand? Like, we weren't on our knees with shit. We weren't begging for forgiveness. We weren't trying to explain ourselves. We had a very tight knit community in the ghetto, basically, or however they would have labeled that at that time. And we considered it to be like our own little world. You know what I mean? And it's only when we decided we didn't have the best food, or we didn't have the best clothing, or and they had better clothing and they had better food and better schools and better teachers and better way of life and better housing, did we leave our comfort zone, I guess, for lack of a better term. But I just don't like our narrative as the Black community. I don't think Black Lives Matter represents how I feel,
Mm.
because as someone that have dealt with more opposition in the black community than the so-called racist companies, structures, or white people in general, it's hard for me to listen to people talk about Black Lives Matter when black people have shot at me and tried to stab me, and like, what are we talking about? Like, I used to make jokes that white people don't know enough about us to really hate us, man. They really don't understand us or give enough a fuck about us to really hate us. But we know so much about each other that I could easily hate you. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? Look what the fuck you got on. Like, I don't even know what sneakers you got on. You got the fly shit on. I could start hating all over you
Right.
because as a standard, I guess, as black people or black men or black community, I grew up with we're supposed to look a particular way, dress a particular way, sound a particular way, walk a particular way, drive a particular car, live in a particular neighborhood, date a particular type of chick. Like, all of that was bullshit, dude. But it took a long time for people to accept that it was bullshit. And we're still in that funk between white people having to learn about us and understand what we've dealt with, understand what we deal with, and what type of trauma that is for us every day, every situation. Just the small nuances of trauma, not necessarily like the blatant ones. And black people just have to accept each other, good, bad, or indifferent, not for more than just that we're black. Like, we have to be able to accept and love each other on a larger scale other than the fact that you and I happen to be black. And if we could take that time to really understand each other and coexist, even though you're black and let's say you like fucking, I don't know, Blink 182 and I'm black and I only like fucking, I don't know, Papa Smoke or Pop Smoke, like,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
still have to be able to coexist. We still have to be able to show the similarities rather than the differences. And the similarities between black men, black people around the world, it's 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 a tale, it's a journey that not many would understand or appreciate, and
Yeah.
there's things you and I could talk about and relate to that myself and someone else that's any other color will not understand or relate to.
I just don't know how possible that is. Like, a few things come to mind is, of course, the ego, the ability to be open minded is something that everyone has. Acceptance
Well,
of what
if
you're
you're
young.
looking if you're looking at it as it's going to get solved in one day, then yeah,
Yeah,
you're right.
yeah.
But if you look at it as, okay, let's just say, for example, black people, white people, it's like domestic violence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even the worst, most domestic violence situation, there is a routine. There is you know, I said something, you said something, we didn't agree, we yelled about it, maybe it turned into a fight, and then we go to our separate corners for a few days, and then we come back out. If we can stop that loop before the violence comes in, then we've got a chance. But if we're always, let's say, someone gets killed, we protest, riot, whatever it is, another one happens, nothing's really being learned, nothing's being educated, nothing's being pushed forward, then it becomes an issue. It becomes a vicious loop that you can't close. But, you got to think about it. When were you born? 80 what?
91.
91. I was born in 70. The difference between living as black people in 1970 versus 1991 would have seemed impossible, some of the things that were able to occur.
Mm-hmm.
Then you think from 91 till 2020, like, we've had a black president. Like, there's just things that a black child in 1970 are seeing now that's just inconceivable.
Mm-hmm.
Totally inconceivable. And it's almost like we haven't taken the time to celebrate our wins. We're too much worried about our losses. Do you know what I mean? Like, we haven't taken the real time to sit back and say, man, what was it like in 1970 versus 1990 versus 1980 versus 1990 versus year 2000 versus 2010 versus 2020? Like, let's sit down and look at the pros and cons. Let's look at the accomplishments, or let's say unaccomplishments, or things that needed to be, that took longer time to actually come to fruition. Like, we have progressed, because we all can't necessarily point the day of our demise and a few other things. We're always pushing, which is fine. But there has to be a time where we could say, okay, let's look at this. Let's sit down and look at the entire situation. What's good? What's bad? Where can we fix? Where did we go wrong? I think that's what needs to happen for us to really understand where we're at, where we're going, and how we can get there. I think there has to be a constant check-in with, okay, we got this, we got this, we got this. If not, it's just us complaining about everything we don't have and not going after things that are actually going to create a bona fide future for us and every American to a certain extent. We just kind of keep rehashing the things that aren't going right. You know what I mean? And we're just blowing those sky high and not even taking an overture on the entire picture as a whole.
Do you believe that social media will be a big driving force into that future?
I mean, it has been.
And you think it's been helping up to this point?
I use it for help. I use it for positivity. What other people use it for, I can't comment on that. You know what I mean? I use it for positivity. So here, you and I was just on some Instagram DM, and here we are, right? So there is some good there, right? Is there some negative? Of course. But you've got to focus on where your projection and what you're trying to do and make sure you're not falling victim to the things you consider to be negative.
And I agree. I was so in this mindset where I was so anti-protesting because I felt like it wasn't doing anything. But then the combination of the protesting with people on the ground level in conjunction with the social media, the awareness never stops. The reminder never stopping. So I think, my mind's this and I think social media, of course, it is what you use it for, but definitely been more beneficial than ever, I think, for us. And it will be.
Well, I think it's how you use it. It's just like anything else. You could use it for good. You could use it for bad. It can amount to nothing or it can amount to everything. I didn't know how to reach a wider audience. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just using myself as an example. So I'll tell you, man, maybe 5 years ago, I had maybe 10,000 followers, maybe 14. I'm at 104,000 now. Like,
that's
what
fire.
was the difference? The difference was worrying about people other than myself, getting up every day thinking about, I can relate this because I felt like this or I've said this, but how's that going to hit that person on that Tuesday morning or that Thursday night? You know what I mean? Like, I really sit down and I think about, are they going to think this is bullshit? Are they really going to buy into this? And I just, for years, kept thinking about that. Like, okay, I wonder if they're really going to buy into that, And it's been crazy to see, once we were all quarantined, people's sleep patterns were crazy. It wasn't, you couldn't guarantee if you posted at a particular time, you were going to get maximum exposure. Like, it was Wild Wild West for a while. You didn't know if you posted something if anyone was going to see that shit. You know what I mean? So that's been a constant kind of rebattle, which is kind of cool because then you kind of understand people and you understand your audience better. But, I went into this thinking about anyone other than myself, dude. And I run my brand thinking about anyone other than myself. There are things I do that please me, but there's a lot of things I do that I'm thinking about the impact overall. And if you can get out of your own head, as an introvert, and start thinking about, hey, man, if I help someone else, one other person, like if I just dedicated myself to helping one other person, you know, all it's going to do is make you a better person.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started practicing with complete strangers, dude. I started practicing because in New York, you got tons of strangers. Like, it just millions of strangers, thousands you see every day, right? So I just started practicing with them, hold the door when I'm coming out the train, hold the elevator, let everyone get in, someone drop their wallet. Oh, here, I had one chick drop her fucking purse, and she was with a baby stroller, and she had just crossed the street. She looked around, where's her purse? It was like a block away. I'm running to get the purse, like, and I'm not looking for the fucking pat on the back. I'm looking for that universal pat on the back. I'm looking for, if I just keep doing this and keep doing this, I'm going to be something that only worries about other people other than myself. I mean, it's supernatural to just worry about yourself. It's completely unnatural to just worry about people that you have no actual bond or kind of, connectivity to. And I just kept
Right.
practicing. I was like, okay, I'm going to do one thing today, 2, 3, 4. And then I just started having fun with it. I tell this story as much as I can. I was having dreams about all of us having to wear masks. And this was like, man, this must have been July of 2019.
Hmm.
And my photo shoot, I had my model, my main model, I made her wear a mask. You know what I mean? And I thought it was cool because it had a skull on it and she had red hair and it was a red skull. So I thought that was cool. But I just kept picturing all of us having to wear masks, and I didn't necessarily understand why. So I would wear masks every day just to be cool. You know what I mean? Like, it was funny to go into the bodegas and they wouldn't, you can't wear that mask in here, take it off. So I was like, all right, cool. So because I would wear the scariest shit you could think of, man. Skulls, clowns, like just
Mhm.
some scary shit. Because for me, some of my worst winters were in Colorado, and I was there 6 years. And it was normal to just get the Carhartt, get the Timbs, get the overalls, and get your ski mask. Like,
Mhm.
you got your ski mask because you didn't know how that wind was going to carry that snow. So you might go to fucking work with a whole face full of snow because the wind changed direction. So, when I started wearing masks way in advance just to look cool and then watch people having to wear masks, it was like, whoa. It was kind of mind blowing. But at the same time, I was watching how society was transitioning with all that. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, and trying to watch the bodega go from you can't wear this mask to you have to wear
That-
this mask, So it was kind of crazy, man.
Going back to your selflessness for a second, I really admire that. I like to think, maybe I'm naive a bit, but I just like to think that everyone has an empathetic bone in their body. When they see something wrong, they feel something at least. People may feel that, but there's not many people who feel and then act on that
Most
empathy.
ignore, feel and ignore, feel and ignore, feel and ignore, and then they get desensitized to it. But I just go into it, man. Like, it's really it's I
You
feed
can't
off
help,
of that.
you can't help it. I feel
I
the same.
feed off of that.
I owe a lot to how I was raised. Well, I was raised by my mother and my grandmother. They were Christian, but they still would abide by certain spiritual practices and just really taught me just to love others just as much as I love myself, and appreciate,
Mm.
protect if you can, and help if you can. So that's not something that everyone is blessed with, but I do like to think deep down people has that desire to be that person, but they just don't
Well,
act.
because I'm like a fitness guy, right? I always think about one rep at a time. You know what I mean? Like, again, I started with let me help one person, and I kind of just looked. I would look all day, every day for that person that I could help. Or let me hold that door. Or let me walk that person across the street, or let me help that baby stroller down the stairs to get into the subway, you know what I mean? Or up the stairs coming out of the subway. I mean, these are so many common things that happen in New York City every fucking day, all fucking day. And
Mm-hmm.
you watch people ignore them. You watch people walk by them. You watch, you watch, you watch. And I was just like, man, this is the perfect way to just build that muscle, so to speak, that grateful muscle, that humble muscle, because I'm super arrogant, and it's only because I've done a lot of things that no one can do.
Mm.
And that sort of consumes you when you're not necessarily getting that response back, right? If I'm OG and I've been doing something, let's say 12 years, and them new cats is making more money than me, it's like, what the fuck? I started this. How am I
Mm-hmm.
making less money than this clown?
Mm-hmm.
And you can internalize that, and it can make you super bitter. It can make you super angry. Or you could say, all right, I accept your challenge. And then just kind of systematically in your mind think, what is it going to take for me to believe that I can get to the status or get the respect or get the recognition I believe I deserve? What is it going to take? And I thought it was money, right? So went and got a bunch of money. Then I thought it was, I don't know, features, and I was on a bunch of people's podcasts, blah, blah, blah. And then they were on my podcast. And what I realized is that it was me as an individual, better individual.
Mm.
That's it. And the only way that I could become a better individual is to think of myself as a very small cog in the wheel that's trying to help things become more positive or things to become better. I can't look at myself like I am the wheel. I'm the biggest wheel ever. Then I have to chart back. Oh, there's Martin Luther King. Oh, there's Malcolm X. These guys, whoa, these guys have done things I make never could do. So then you kind of minimize, not necessarily you as an individual, but maybe your piece. Maybe your piece of this is just a little smaller. So it really comes down to defining how you want yourself to be viewed by others. And what is it going to take for you to get yourself there? And it always comes down to becoming a better person individually. And that's, how do you treat your mom? How do you treat your dad? How do you talk to your friends? How do you treat your friends? How do you treat your family members? How do you treat your neighbor? How do you treat strangers? And because we see so many strangers every day, they're the perfect playing ground. How do you treat that waitress, that, Foot Locker worker, or whatever? Like,
Right.
it's these small things that if you can think of them first before yourself and think about attending to their very, very small needs. The woman at Foot Locker just wants you to treat her with some respect. She knows she's wearing a piece of shit uniform and she's working the cliche job and maybe
Mm.
she's going nowhere. But, she would still like your respect at the end of the day. Same with the person that's begging for change in the fucking subway, And I usually tell those guys, you'll have a better day. I don't necessarily always give them money, but I try to give them something. You know what I mean? But that baby moms is coming down the stairs to the subway. Grab that baby stroller. Like, you bigger than grabbing the wheel of a baby stroller and taking a lady down? Like, what's wrong with you?
Mm.
Holding that door open when, we all come out the train, or holding the train open so someone can run to it. Like, just dumb shit that and when you do that and don't ask, because a stranger may never say thank you. You know what I mean? Like, they may not. But you're pretty much putting yourself out there, taking that risk that you're going to do this, and they're not going to appreciate it. And if you can do that with simple strangers and not take it personal, but be grateful if they do say thank you, then you can convert that into your everyday life. You can convert that to your family you haven't spoke to in 10 years or 5 years, or that chick you've been yelling at or whatever. Like, you can easily convert those types of, let's say, expectations, lowering them or making them more realistic, if you can do it with everyday strangers, man. So I just practice on everyday strangers. And that's the biggest part that hurt me or hit me about COVID, was that we couldn't touch each other, or we couldn't. I'm a hugger. Like, I like to hug, I love to give them pounds, what's up? What's up? Give me that high five. Give me that fist bump, I'm that guy. And to not know I was going to get that connectivity and maybe never get it fully, strangers, it sucks. That sucks.
Right.
But The key to building yourself up is through other people. You're never going to be able to build yourself up through yourself.
I kind of agree with that, but I feel I'm a testament to the opposite in terms own I needed to build myself up on my own. I actually recently got out of therapy earlier this year because I felt like I was using it as a crutch. Using it as a crutch for healing. I was using it. I feel like I wasn't taking full accountability of my mistakes and my journey by using therapy as a way to heal myself. That may not make perfect sense to me, but through intense self-reflection and through accountability and through me facing every problem that I had been through up to this point in my own, I feel I was able to achieve healing a bit faster. I do plan to get back into therapy very soon, just to have that extra level of healing. But I feel like self-reflection, sitting within myself, and not having any external mediums to maybe distract me or possibly put the accountability on and the weight on, I feel it was able to help me a bit more. And also, one thing you said that was very impactful to me is you feel I feel like you own the uniqueness of your journey. Like you kind of own everything you do and realize that what you do, literally no one else can emulate. No one else can wear that hat the way you do. No one
Hello.
no one else can curate this conversation the way I can. And I think
Right.
that's important. I think that's what a lot of people need to accept about themselves is that you cannot be emulated. Who you are and what you do is unique to you and only you.
Well, one thing I'll say is, so I'm old school. I'm not against therapy. What I don't like to rely on anything other than myself. I
Mm-hmm.
never like to rely on anybody but myself, knowing full well I need a team to survive. But my fallback is always me. So when I don't do something or when I don't know something or when I haven't learned something, I really put it on me. I don't put it on anyone else. So even with my mental health, um, I'm just my best coach. You know what I mean? Like I'm my best coach. I'm my best motivator. I'm my best critic, like or worst critic, if you say that. So I just believe in me so much that I've never necessarily gone into the concept of therapy. Now, do I need someone to talk to? Definitely. Do I need someone to lean on? Maybe. Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Do I need someone to relate to? Definitely. But above all, I need someone that can listen to my day to day bullshit and after 4 or 5 conversations come to a conclusion that they maybe want to share with me. You know what I mean? Like that's big. So I get the concept and I understand it. And the only reason why I personally didn't become a psychiatrist is I didn't want to master Floyd and all these other guys, but I was going to become a psychiatrist straight up because mental behavior and behavioral sciences is just my life. You know, honestly, even as a fitness guy, even as an entrepreneur, it's really it really comes down to that relatability of who you are to other people in conjunction to the world, right? And how can you articulate that? What's the best way to articulate that? And you'd be surprised. I speak several languages, and what I mean by that is not necessarily like French, Spanish, whatever, but I speak different languages to get the same point across. And it's because I'm talking to different communities. You know what I mean? So it's really about understanding that audience. And if the audience is you, it's understanding yourself. Like I constantly watch everything I do. Like I'm fucking ridiculous. What I've been doing for the last 2 weeks is every scary movie that used to scare me as a kid, I'm watching it again.
Oh wow.
The The Omen, The Exorcist, Halloween,
Mm.
Friday the 13th, Hellraiser, Amityville Horror, fucking Chainsaw Massacre, Cujo,
Mm.
Cat's Eye, like
Classic.
you name it. And I go in there and I'm like, why the fuck was I so scared of this dumb shit? And then I just think about what my mindset was at that time, maybe what I was wearing, what year it was. Like, I really get into myself, dude. Like, I believe in me ultimately. And what I mean by that is, I don't believe there's any problem I can't solve if I just sit down and do three very basic things: listen to myself, listen to the people around me, and listen to the things around me. That's it. Every situation I've ever been in, I did three things: listen to myself, listen to the people around me, and listen to the things around me. And it's never gone wrong. Like, I've never gone wrong. So I get into these conversations with many people. Oh, have you listened to Joe Rogan? Oh, I listen to Joe Rogan. Oh, Joe Rogan. I said, I listened to Sin Martinez.
Mm.
Oh, I read so and so. I read so and so. I read Sin Martinez. Oh, what's your favorite podcast? Sin Martinez. Like, what are we talking about?
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten to a level, man, where I don't believe anyone can help me. And what I mean by that, I'm not discrediting people that have been here before me, or people that are here now, or people that know more than me, or have more, whatever. I just think that relying on their information is not going to help me overall.
Fuck. You
I
speaking about
think I think relying on their ideas is just not going to help me.
right.
I think I was born in 1970. I lived in places at a particular moment in time that has particular experiences and understanding of community life and the universe that you're not going to be able to understand. I can articulate it the best way I can. I can write it. I can make a video of it. I could do whatever. But living it, breathing it, smelling it every fucking day is it just brings in a different thing. Case in point, why the fuck would I go through all these movies that scared the shit out of me as a kid and I'm damn near 50? Why would I do that? I'll tell you why. I can change those fucking memories. I get to go back into that database,
Mm.
that exorcist database of this fucking white girl that scared the shit out of me, and I can say, nope, no longer scary. No longer scary. No longer scary. No longer scary. No longer. Oh, that's stupid. Oh, look at that dumb shit. Oh, that's fake as fuck. Look at that. That's a pump of blood. Like, I get to do that. Why? I believe if I can go in there, it'll bring my fear factor on other things down. If I'm able to go into the most fearful things, I'll tell you, man, Friday the 13th, because I used to go to summer camp every fucking year.
Oh, wow.
That shit scared the motherfucker out of me, dude. Halloween 2, all this shit. Hellraiser for sure. I didn't
Mm.
want to go to hell. Who wanted to go to hell? And look at this shit. So now I get to go in, and regardless of what, let's just say, those levels of fear are, regardless of where those levels of fear are in 2020, I get to go in there and turn them off. I get
Mm.
to literally go in there and say, oh, that dumb shit. Fuck that. That ain't even scary. Look at this. And I get to psychoanalyze why I was scared in the first place. I've gotten so good at it that I can tell you which of those movies were major motion pictures and which one of them were like B rolls that fucked around and made money. Carrie, I watched Carrie, dude. The first one from like 76 or 4 or whatever. That was a
Right.
major motion picture. It was also interesting. Can you still see me?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting enough, you could see where they spent all the money. You could see, oh, they spent money on the actresses. Oh, they tried to do this. They tried to do that. They took a super basic concept, threw some things at it. I think they made it for $1 million or 700,000 at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Made like 38 mil or 50 mil or something ridiculous. So that multiplier is crazy. But this is where I'm good at going in to my past and just re-evaluating information. and changing those databases right there. Because I believe the more I can change those fear databases, the less I'm fearful of any fucking thing, for one. But I get to go in there and then share those types of stories with someone like you that's still trying to discover that mind is super deep, man.
Yeah.
And you just got to exercise it like a fucking heavyweight boxer. And if you can get into those super, super, very, very small craniums of your thought, of your mind, you can control your destiny, period.
I think the fears that we feel in the present day are only a reflection of what we experienced in our past. I don't think fear
Absolutely.
is a real
Absolutely.
feeling. It's triggered from your past. So
Absolutely.
so if you go back to your past and uncover the real truths in your present day, you won't fear anything. I never thought of
Exactly.
it until just now. And it's
Well,
funny, like,
I'm seeing you and me. I'm hearing some of you and me. So I'm sharing some of the cheat codes, man.
yeah,
These are
man.
some of the cheat codes. Go in there, dude. Like, what you fear right now, you won't fear in a year or so. You may not fear in 6 months. But that doesn't mean that the sensation of that fear, which they call a reoccurrence, may not still come up. So now you
Right.
got to go into those same fears as they come up, and you got to constantly challenge them to get rid of them.
Are you familiar with the law of diminishing returns? Because that's the only thing I really fear in life. If you're not, and for the listeners who aren't, it's basically when the amount of profits and rewards don't match the level of effort you put into something. So, for example, I'm in the process of publishing my first book, and I put 4 years of my life into this thing. I'm very passionate about it. I really know and I feel it's going to change my life forever. And I just got off a call the other day with a bigger company that could kind of help propel my goal of being a New York Times bestselling author, my goal of being an Amazon bestselling author ahead. Um, and during the call, I was explaining the concept of the book. I could just tell, like what I have is so special and just so unique. The person on the call couldn't fully understand anything I was doing. And after the call, it was so productive. I was left with a bit of fear because I was at the crossroads. It's like, do I want to continue on this path on my own, or do I want to invest in a company who may help me get to my goal but not fully understand my vision? And I kind of settled on just doing it on my own. Like, my only fear in life is failure. All
No.
fear
Well,
is not.
you're young, dude.
Yeah, yeah.
So let me tell you a few things. I'll tell you that when I first started my journey with Afro Brutality, I was fucking successful out the gate, dude.
Mm.
Like, as soon as I launched, it was my first shirt is probably still my best selling shirt ever, ever. And that was my very first one. So that's your reasonable doubt. That's your Illmatic. You know what I mean? Like, boom, right out the gate, killing it. And then I just started fucking with people on what I did and why I did it. So I bring that up to say that the things that I saw myself doing, it was 11 years ago. And now I get to do them now. So you cannot put a time on any of this shit. And you've got to always act like you've had it. You got it, you had it. You just catching up to it.
Right. I've definitely been more intentional with what I want out of life. I've been writing it down specifically, saying it
Dude,
specifically.
and the last thing is, you're going to get certain companies, corporations, and people in your life that are not fully going to understand what you're doing. That doesn't make them a non-ally.
Yeah, I got a lot of information.
You may be smarter than the people that you're talking to. If that's the case, then you've got to understand that it took you 29 years to get where you're at, and you're just talking to them for the first time.
Mm.
So you've got to bring them into your language. You got to bring them into your thoughts. You got to bring them into your ideologies. You can't just assume a one and done conversation and they don't get it. I'm gonna do it by myself. No, let's hope no one gets it,
Mm.
because guess what? That means it's a complete original thought.
I think
Let's
so.
hope no one gets it. but don't cut off the potential team. Just run with it.
It's not necessarily a cutoff. It's just, well, first of all, it costs way too much to really invest in their services. So I feel like it'd be
if you're paying them, then no.
Yeah.
If they're paying you, then yes.
Yeah, I would have to pay them, and it's like I could do everything I want to do and have it align with my vision perfectly for a lot cheaper, and probably be more fun. So I'm choosing to bet on myself going forward, and I think I know it's going to work out. I know it is.
Good. And even if you don't, hopefully one day you will.
For sure. I got like maybe 2 or 3 more questions.
All right, I'm ready.
I wanted to know, when did you feel confident enough to identify as a motivator? From my perception of like motivators, therapists, but prior to therapy, I always felt like these people had life figured out completely already. And that kind of settled me into a bit of fear, because it's like I'm talking to someone who has life figured out already. I felt a bit insecure that I don't. How do I get to that level? And I'm curious, when you chose to identify as a motivator, when you chose to create Afro Brutality, was that an easy adjustment? And were you cognizant of like people who may have felt like me, who looked at you as a person who figured out life completely?
I haven't really looked at it that way. That's the first time I really had to look at that. Like someone that, in your words, figured it out completely. Like it's a constant battle. You don't always figure it out. What you figured out is what role you want to play, how you want to be seen, what you want to say. Like that's what you figure out. It's never, I've got it all figured out. No, I've got 1 or 2 things that I've figured out. I've got top 5, and I just push my top 5. I really don't, I don't got it all figured out. No, there's a lot of shit I don't know how to do, because it's a balanced scale. Like if I'm good at this, I might not be so good at that. If I'm good at this, I might not be so good at that. And that's where you bring in team and allies and those people that are good at those things. That's number one.
Like, I feel like we look up to motivators. We don't look at them eye to eye. You know what I mean? So it's like I'm looking up to you for help, because I feel like you have it figured out, like what I'm seeking. So,
well, I would say, the way I would tell people in my gym, I would say, you come to me because right now you may trust me more than you trust yourself, which is fine. I said, but at the end of this, I'm going to make you trust yourself more than you trust me. Like, that's the point.
Mm-hmm.
But like everything else, it's not 0 to 100. It's 0 to 1.5 to 1 to 2, back to 1, up to 10, back to, like it's a clever mix of trying to, again, being that very small piece that can make change in the world and in the universe. In terms of when I felt like I was a motivator, I mean, it was when I'm telling people what to do in my gym or in the park or whatever, and they're seeing results off of what I told them to do. I'm like, okay, I clearly know what the fuck I'm doing, so let's move on.
Right.
And then at that point, it's just, let's say, motivating them to continue on and maintaining the success that they've already achieved.
Well, what's like the hardest part about what you do, if there's any?
It's a clever dance of telling people everything and not telling them too much. Right? If I really sat down and went to town on how it is I got to where I'm at now, it would take a very long time, because it's a lot of success and so-called failure and trial and error and blah, blah, blah. So I would say that the hardest part is, let's say, matching the message with the audience. Going into a situation, like talking to someone like you and saying, let me make sure I'm answering their questions. Let me make sure they're going to get something out of this. You know what I mean? Because I could just go on a rant and you get absolutely nothing out of this, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And at this point, whatever date this is, October 23rd, 2020, whatever, do you feel successful or do you feel accomplished?
I'm super successful.
Mm.
The accomplishment kind of brings an end to the sentence, right? So I see more success as something that you have to maintain. And I see accomplishments as, let's say, a goal. Oh, I've accomplished that goal. But was that goal part of what was going to make me successful or part of how I want to be successful? Because that's the thing. Like, because I'm an overthinker, because I'm an intellectual introvert, I don't want to just be successful. I want to be successful a particular way. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't just want to be successful. Okay, I got money, but how did you get it? Okay, well, I got it like this. Okay, I want to not just say I'm successful, but I want to say that I did it my way and I did it this particular way because I was looking for this particular end result. So when I take a look at where I'm at and I make like an assessment of where I'm at and where I'm headed, I'm like, okay, we're 11 years in. Like,
Mm.
can we finally say we're good? Like, and you'll have those people that knew me when I was more of what they would consider successful, and they would say, "Oh, you're not as successful as you used to be." I'm like, "No, I made a conscious decision to let that go for something bigger, and that requires a lot of research. That requires a lot of trial and error, and that requires money. And not all that money is going to, let's see, come back, right? It's a long term investment. So you're dropping this and in for a long term vision. So I'm, there's a lot of shit I accomplished, but I'm more proud of my success, meaning I'm more proud about how other people are viewing what I did and why I did it and how long I've been doing it, if that makes sense.
Right. This is a two-part question, and then we have one last segment on the show. We can get out of here. As you assess your life, you put the mirror up, you self-reflect. What is you're obviously heading somewhere specific with Afro Brutality and the things that you do. So I want to know, one, where is that? What does that look like? And what are some things you need to possibly work on or change or adjust internally in order to propel you there faster than the pace you're heading now?
Um, faster. Um, faster would be to hoard it for a little while and just kind of do that what we would call self a savior, like just you can't have this. I'm going to wait until it's megaton strong and then I will release this to the world. Yes. And then bam. So yeah, that would be easier if I just didn't do podcasts with people I don't know, or I didn't answer DMs that of people I don't know that aren't verified, or you know what I mean? Like if I played that game, I'd get there much quicker. And that's always been the case. If I had just looked at other motherfuckers and how they did that shit and just said, oh, that damn, that worked so fast. Let me just do that. I'd be there much quicker.
Right.
But if anyone that knows me, I would never do that. And I wasn't sure. Did you ask me where I'm headed with this?
Yeah, like what's the end goal? Like, what are you working towards specifically?
Um,
What does that reality look like at the end?
I haven't gotten there because I'll get to a certain point and I'm like, damn, that's achievable. Like, fuck. Like, I'm now struggling with the unattainable.
Mm.
So it's matching the time with the message and it's matching the message with the audience. So I realized that we're living in an era where success is viewed on a mass scale under certain parameters, right? Success in my time was respect. You walk down the street, people knew you, you had a good had a good reputation and no one fucked with you. Like that that for me was the 90s. Like, guys you knew that had it like that, that could just walk down the street and the best of whatever with the hottest chick of whatever. And no one, everyone knew who they were. They had a good reputation and no one fucked with them.
Mm.
Like, that was like, okay, that's what I want, right? What I'm getting is that response on a level that I saw coming, but I wasn't. I was like, okay, I couldn't have foreseen that particular level, you know. So it's hard to, let's say I'm going here. This is what I'm doing because I'm still a man of the people, right? So I'm still listening to what we actually need and how that narrative should be played out for maximum success. So I'm still working with that. I'm still working on how I want that overall picture to be. I've got my own, you know, top five on how I want this to end, and it ends with like Ozzy coming to the Apollo, you know, Ozzy Osbourne, meeting Ozzy Osbourne at the Apollo. It comes to having Slayer at my first uh, skateboarding event, you know, in Harlem, which will be like a heavy metal skateboard event.
Fire.
So that's two. Three is my own building. I gotta have my own building somewhere in Harlem. And I want it to be, I don't care what it is. It could be a brownstone that I redo. It could be condos that I redo. But I want everything in there to be Afro brutality. Or for my, want different suites to have different themes to it, you know, that I decorate. And then I want some kind of public transportation right in Harlem. You know, they got City Bike. I heard it's for shit. I keep hearing complaints all the time. You know, I want some brutality bikes out there. You know what I mean? And that's four. And then the fifth one is, you know, major motion picture right in fucking Harlem that I
Mm.
run or executive produce or all of it. That's my top five, and that's I'm each one of them I play with every day. So I know in my mind where I'm at on the status of each one of them, and it's fun. It's fun.
Fire. I really see a lot of myself in you. Like a lot of things you said is kind of the mindset I'm really working towards and trying to achieve. So this has definitely been a really great conversation. I'm very appreciative
Yeah,
of it.
yeah. I'm talking to you, man. I don't know if anyone else is going to listen to this, but
Yeah,
you know,
I really am.
a man in my position wants to be able to educate the
Yeah.
next generation, man.
So I like to end this podcast off with a segment I call "Don't Sleep." So it's basically something we recommend to the audience they shouldn't sleep on. It could be something simple as a food you had earlier this week, or it could be something a bit
Mm.
deep. Mine's a bit simple this week. I heard a really good album. I think it's honestly my favorite album of the year, best album of 2020. It's by this artist called King Cruel. It's like kind of like a neo psychedelica, uh, punk rock ish, folk ish type of music. It's you got to be open
Mm.
minded to enjoy it. The album is called
Send me a single.
Yo. That album's fire. Yeah,
Just text me a single, man.
yeah. He's from like South London. Album's called Man Alive, and I definitely recommend the audience to check
Yeah.
open minded
J,
approach.
you know about J1?
No, I don't.
J1 is the oof.
Put me on, man.
Yeah, I will. I will.
Yeah. Do you have something the audience shouldn't sleep on?
Don't sleep on yourself, man. Like, there's no book that could teach you about yourself. There's no preacher that could teach you about yourself. There's no doctor that could teach you about yourself. There's no parent that could teach you about yourself. They can all give hints. They can all give their iterations of it or their interpretation of it, man. But you know everything there is to know about yourself, man. You just really do. So never, ever sleep on yourself and your own abilities.
Sure. Hey, again, I really appreciate. I'm right here in Jersey. I'm planning to move to Harlem in a few months, actually. So I would love to see everything
Yeah,
with.
man. Let's break bread. Absolutely.
Yeah, I would definitely love to connect, like outside of just this podcast
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Come
I
through, man.
I have a lot of other resources and people I work with, so we could definitely make something happen.
Yeah, man. I'm with you.
Bet. Please shout out where people can support you and follow you.
Say again?
Please shout out where people could support you and follow you.
Oh, Afro Brutality, Mr. Sin on Instagram, and Sin is SYN. So Mr. MR SYN. And then, of course, Afro Brutality, all one word. And then I've got Afro Brutality skateboard, kitchen, everything. I just believe in me 1,000%, man. I only invest in myself if I can help it.
Perfect. Of course, all that information will be in the bio for the episode, obviously on all the social media platforms. Go to introvertedpod.com for all information regarding the show. Any events we have coming up. We actually might have another live show coming up, but more details on that soon. And again, Sam, man, thank you so much for being on the show. Hope to have you back.
Yeah, man. Absolutely, man.
Or thank y'all for listening. Thank you for being on.
Yeah, of course.
Have a good one.
You too, man.